The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, Astro listeners, to tonight's Mercury Retrograde in Leo free Pay It Forward webinar from EAN. This is Media Monk, also known as Leroy, the general manager for the network. We'll get to Kim Marie shortly here and start the podcast. I just want to make a couple of quick announcements. Most of you have probably found us through our YouTube channel or our free astrology forecasts. Star Lady Soul Reader Network that we began producing 7 years ago or so, I think. So just know that we do post that free podcast on our forecasting webinars page of the website every week. Go there, get the current transits in the sky for everybody. We also are running a special now. I made an announcement on tonight's free Pay It Forward Mercury Retrograde class. We are also sailing or putting on sale our forecasting webinars, which are the latest ingresses of Chiron and Aries, Uranus and Taurus, Saturn and Capricorn, Jupiter and Scorpio, etc. All those are stacked up there on that forecasting webinars page. Just click on webinars. It'll drop down to forecasting webinars. Go to that page, and you'll want to add all those to your cart that you want to buy, and apply the coupon code retrograde at checkout and save 30%. The archetypes and cycles are encouraged for each one of those ingresses I mentioned, and also you can pick out your personal house transit for those ingresses in your natal chart, and that'll kind of serve as a nice summer mini reading for you if you listen to those with an intuitive ear. So we want to thank you for doing that, and with that, I will turn it over to Kim Marie, the Managing Director for the Evolutionary Astrology Network.
And you started your recording already, all right? Correct?
Yes, thank you for the double check.
All right, just wanted to make sure. Welcome, everyone, to our Mercury Retrograde in feisty, fiery Leo. Do you see any of that energy going on around you? How well can you take a deep breath and remain calm? Says the lady who has to produce these podcasts and get all the electronics to work at the same time. It's not on one of the PowerPoint slides, but one of the things we could look at with Mars retrograde in Aquarius, ruling technology, and Mercury ruling all those communications, which most of us do through technology right now. Between the two of them retrograde here over the next few weeks, it wouldn't be surprising to have, the cell phone get dropped and lose its screen, to, have the radiator go out on the car, to, the endless details on those technical things. For those of you who are new to EAN, you can study with us 3 different ways. We publish a free weekly audio podcast that you can get from our website. You all can also subscribe to our Astro Library, 1 month, 6 months, 12 months, or you can do a monthly recurring that you can cancel at any time. And you can see the 3 different sections of the Astro Library that we have. We also have an Evolutionary Astrology course, and I'm using an old slide. We do not have that on sale right now. I didn't notice that little detail. If you really want to get the course, contact us and we'll make sure you can get a discount, as you see on your screen right there. That's you showing up on these calls or getting the PDF. So Mars and Mercury retrograde at the same time. This Mercury retrograde is contained entirely within the Mars retrograde cycle. Now, when Mars is retrograde, it's opposite the Sun. And Mercury and Venus retrogrades are always conjunct the Sun. So when we have a Mars retrograde cycle, we can have a Mercury retrograde, we can have a Venus retrograde, and they'll end up being more or less in opposite signs. And what that tells us in general is there's a potential for better objectivity relative to any of those two opposite signs? Well, it just so happens with Mercury retrograde in Leo, it's all about me, and Mars retrograde in Aquarius, it is about being as objective as you can hopefully be. It's really going to kind of intensify any of these Leo and Aquarius archetypes, that you can just think of with your own imagination. So I just put up a few of the Leo and Aquarius distortions. Me versus you versus me and you. Us versus them versus us and them. Hate versus love. Elitism versus equality. And all of the drama scenes we can come up with that really cover up insecurities underneath the surface. The more we act out, the more insecure we are. Not mentioning any names on the public stage, mind you. It can also be the trauma scenes that take place on planet Earth today due to patriarchal conditionings. Another shooting again today. And this one is a stand your ground. So if I push and shove you, you have a right to kill me, and I have no what's that? There's no feedback. There's no what's my word I'm trying to think of? Mercury retrograde. I get away with it scot-free. I don't have anything to do. Stay tuned for your news tomorrow. So, how well can we take a deep breath and listen before making any considered actions? The listening is Mercury retrograde. The considered actions is Mars retrograde. Mars is always instinctive action. And when it's retrograde 2.5 months every other year, it's always think before we act. And in this case, with Mercury and Mars, it can be think before we speak. However, let's go and catch up with a few of our basics on Mercury retrograde. Those of you who listen to these free Mercury retrograde forecasts are going to recognize some of these slides. I'll try and go over them just a little faster than normal so we can have more time for interpretation. Why planetary retrogrades? They are a phenomenon that happens from our perspective here on Earth. If we watch the nighttime sky, the planets appear to slow down, go backwards for a while before they go direct. I'll show you a visual of that in just a moment. But when we have those planetary retrogrades, they are more powerful because any retrograde planet is always at its closest proximity to planet Earth, no matter which planetary retrograde, Mercury on out to Pluto or even Eris we consider. Now, planetary retrogrades, they automatically cause us to withdraw from the status quo or the consensus norms, and they help us redefine that planet and its archetype according to what works for us individually. In other words, we get to break free from those consensus conditionings and align with our own natural laws from our perspective. And as we align with our own individual natural law, that then leads us in the direction of aligning with natural spiritual laws and principles, which are timeless, they're universal, and they're found from within ourselves, and they're found observing and correlating in nature. So answers to any planetary retrograde always come from going within. Why do I feel this way? Why do I think this way? What does this mean for me? What am I to learn from this? So when a planet is retrograde, it is always in a non-static state or a perpetual state of evolving. And so we'll look to where that planet is retrograde in our chart by sign and house. It's going to show us the outward manifestations of the retrograde, but the opposite sign and house in our chart is going to show us the clarity and how we want to express and evolve this natural law of that planetary archetype. A transiting retrograde planet is always related back to its natal archetype as well. So wherever you have natal Mercury, by sign, by house, by whatever aspects it's making, anytime Mercury's retrograde by transit, your natal Mercury is going to be activated. And so are the aspects to your natal chart with Mercury. Now, if you're someone who was born with Mercury retrograde, you can experience a temporary harmony during a transiting Mercury retrograde. I'll show you with the US chart coming down the road, but if you use the July 4th, 1776 chart, how many of you are aware that the US has natal Mercury retrograde? We'll look at that in a little bit. Here's some Mercury astronomy for you. It only takes 88 days to go around the sun, but because the Earth is also going around the sun, we end up having 3 to 4 retrogrades per year, anywhere from 20 to 24 days. And so from our geocentric perspective, it seems like Mercury takes a year to go around the sun, just like the Earth. And again, geocentric phenomena. Now, Mercury will only get more than 29 degrees away from the sun from our Earth perspective. This is why if you look at a natal chart, Mercury is either the sign before, the sign of, or the sign after your sun sign. It can never get beyond that. Here is the visual of Mercury if we looked at it every night in the nighttime sky and actually had the power to watch it up close. Here's where the point, here's where it enters pre-shadow and makes that first passage through so many degrees. Here's where it goes retrograde, which is where we are right now, and appears to make that second transit through those same degrees going backwards. And then here it goes direct and goes through that post-shadow until it reaches the point where it went stationary retrograde and goes beyond. This is what Mercury does in the sky 3 to 4 times a year. Now, Mercury retrograde patterns. If you haven't figured this out yet, Mercury's retrogrades reverse through the elements. How many of you can go fire, earth, air, water? Can you go water, air, earth, fire? That's how the Mercury retrogrades go. And so Mercury will spend approximately 1 year having its retrograde cycles in one element. Then it transitions the next year from one element to the next and on and on. So in 2018, these retrograde cycles are starting in the fire element. We had a Mercury retrograde in Aries. Now we've got a Mercury retrograde in Leo. And we're going to have a Mercury retrograde in Sag water the end of this year. What this does, though, is it combines to make Mercury sometimes seem like it is in certain elements for extra long time periods. 6.5 months, Mercury is in fire signs in 2018. Here's a visual for you with an actual number of days. Look at this. Half the year, Mercury in fire. Any feistiness going on. Just that alone, you can tell that, you know, there's going to be a lot of little fiery communication energy, spirited, excitable communication energy. And as you can see here, the other 3 elements then got to squeeze in the remaining half of the year by themselves. And, you know, how well can we feel our way through thinking? How well can we listen or communicate clearly when the air element is in? Little short on that this year. Stay tuned. We'll see what it turns out to be next year when we do Mercury's retrograde cycles in 2019. Here's some basics in the Mercury archetype. Mercury currently rules 2 signs. Its rulership of Gemini in the 3rd house is the outer side of Mercury due to Gemini in 3rd house being the active polarity. This is where the conscious mind and left brain of Mercury wants to classify the world, facts and figures and numbers. You know, this is where it gets into all the details of communication. Gemini 3rd house opposite to Sag 9th. Gemini has a tendency to expose any weak links or show us the relativity of truth, when Sag wants to get high and mighty and it's my way or the highway. The Gemini third house side of Mercury can be quite talkative, very excitable, sometimes argumentative, but they can also be pretty accommodating and adaptable. Now, the inner side of Mercury is its rulership of Virgo in the sixth house. And this is due to that passive polarity and also due to somewhat the earth element as well. It's still conscious mind and left brain, but here we want to start to analyze and figure out why something works this way and see if we can put those pieces together and 1 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 3 and just one step beyond the other. It involves the ability to start reasoning and discriminate. It is where we want to self-improve or sometimes do purification. It's where we learn to be of service to another person or to society, because Virgo 6 leads into the second half of the circle or zodiac. So it's a mutable archetype of going from self, Aries to Leo, to others, Libra to Pisces. Now, with the patriarchal distortions we've had on planet Earth for the last few thousand years, if not last 6,000 to 8,000, it is also part of the sadomasochism distortion, which is guilt. We have been taught to believe somehow that Source is perfect and we're imperfect. It's easy to see our imperfections and therefore feel guilty. And if we have guilt linked to atonement, we're the victim. We've got to make amends. If we have guilt linked to anger, we're the victor and we want to get them before they get us. These are distortions of the Mercury side of Virgo and the sixth house. In the natural law perspective, Virgo and sixth house are the healers of the zodiac. Their service is, how do I serve myself and others? How do I help you self-improve? How do I help you heal? How do I help you become a better person and help myself at the same way? So there can be a lot of love and giving with the natural side of Mercury's rulership to Virgo in the sixth house. Mercury retrograde, release excess thought. Basically, our mind is saturated. It's hard to process information or take in new ideas. And so it's time to review and release any mental patterns that no longer serve us. How well can you unplug from your electronics during a Mercury retrograde? I can do it when I'm out camping. Otherwise, I'm just as probably, just as plugged in as everybody else. But it's a time period for turning inward and learning how to be quiet. That means learning to think for yourself, to trust intuition first, logic, Virgo, facts, Gemini second. And this is because left brain surrenders to right brain. And we know this because the ruler of Gemini points to Sagittarius, Jupiter. And the ruler of Virgo points to Pisces, Neptune. Sag is right brain and intuition. Pisces, Neptune is our whole brain, the largest perspective of anything we can understand. So whenever Mercury's retrograde, just by natural rulerships, the mutable quadrant is quite activated, which has us asking the bigger, larger questions. It's also about finding quiet time in all the busyness of a retrograde overload. I have Mercury a half a degree from my sun. Over the years, 30 plus years now of observing Mercury retrogrades, I've just learned prioritize those details. How do I pace myself? What's at the top of the list? What else can wait? Can I take time to rest in between all the busyness? And of course, in the midst of finding quiet time, we have to have time for multiple communications, because nothing is always typically communicated clearly during a Mercury retrograde. So say it again, discuss it again, discuss it again, discuss it again, however many times it takes. And of course, it is a time period to pay attention to the details. Whether you're driving, whether it's your electronics and technology, that all belongs with Mercury. And it's going to be, as I said, even more impacted with Mercury retrograde in Aquarius, which rules technology in general. And if we need to with Mercury retrograde, sometimes we have to do it more than once to really understand it. Or if it's something we just want to gloss over and I'll organize that dresser drawer later. Sometimes it really is, okay, let's pull everything out of that dresser drawer. Let's throw away what I don't need. Let's clean it up and reorganize it so I can find something easier next time. In other words, Mercury retrograde, sometimes it's about taking the time to do it the best way you can figure out instead of just glossing over the details. And of course, it's always about gaining clarity on wherever is the best course of mental actions. If you're into affirmations, this is the best time to let go of old negative soft self-talk patterns and really work to train the brain. What fires together wires together. What fires together, synapses wires together. So this is a good time to train your brain to learn new affirmations. Here are our dates for Mercury's retrograde in Leo, going from exterior conjunction, Mercury on the far side of the sun, to the next one. Mercury entered pre-shadow early July. Here it is going retrograde, July 25th, 26th, depending upon where you live in the United States. Mercury's interior conjunction, its halfway point, August 8th, 16.5 Leo. And of course, Mercury direct, August 18th, 19th at 11.5 Leo. And then you can see when Mercury finishes up with its post-shadow or that third passage. Now remember, the highlight of all planetary retrogrades is either the conjunction, Mercury-Venus, or the opposition, Mars on out to the Sun. So this is the highlight of the Mercury retrograde cycle. Interestingly, we have a lunar eclipse July 27th. We have a solar eclipse August 11th. So this Mercury retrograde is not only sandwiched in between Mars retrograde, and by the way, their opposition was back on July 5th at, hold on just a second here, I didn't put this on a slide. Their actual opposition, there was only one, was July 5th at about 9 degrees, Mercury Leo, Mars already retrograde in 9 Aquarius. But so this is the time period you want to pay attention to getting the mental ahas and understandings with whatever is frustrating for us via Mercury retrograde or bothering us with Mercury retrograde. I had a friend who called me a couple of days ago and was just a victim of identity theft, and she thinks it was when that credit reporting agency, whichever one that was, you know, there were 150 million people whose data got compromised. They had everything. They had her phone number, her address, her social, her ID, her all her credit history, and she happened to have been a member of LifeLock, and so they notified her right away. And up to this point in the last week, she spent about 20 hours just trying to get everything straightened out. At the same time, she had somebody crash in and total her car, and the person had no insurance. So here's her credit frozen, and she needs to go get a new car. And she was asking me for timing, and she says, first of all, it's going to take me 2-3 weeks just to get everything settled. And I says, well, you'll be past the Mercury retrograde halfway point. The closer you can get to August 19th or even August 26th when Mars goes retrograde, the more smoothly things will go for you getting a new loan, taking out another loan to get a new used vehicle. And then she goes, oh, so I'll just wait till the 1st of September. Yeah, Mercury goes out of shadow by then. Yes, that would be a good time to then consider going forward. So, oh, and by the way, she has a Moon-Mars conjunction in Leo. The Mercury-Mars opposition went over that. The theft happened a couple of weeks after that, but Mars retrograde in Aquarius is opposing her natal Mars 3 times. So just a little example. If you think you've got something going on, take a sigh of relief, okay? You don't have that much detail going on. Here's Mercury stationary retrograde chart, July 25th. I tend to make things out of Rapid City, where I live, Leroy and I do 0 degrees Aries houses because then it makes the chart generic for all of us, and we can all just relate to the basics of all the aspects. But this is how active Mercury retrograde in Leo is, including the sun. It's going to aspect 7 different planets here. And 6 of these planets are going to be retrograde. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Uranus goes, or 7 planets. Uranus is going to go retrograde before Mercury goes direct. August 7th to the 18th, 19th, we have 7 planets retrograde, everyone. Whew. All right. What are we going to be throwing off in early August in the midst of all of these eclipses? Just kind of take a deep breath and quiet and sense the energy within yourself, even without the chart. Just sense your own energy. What's been building up within you that you are just wanting to throw off? I have the Mercury retrograde in my 7th house. We have family, friends, all kinds of people who come to the Black Hills in the summertime. I'm like ready to throw everybody off and run into the mountains. And I have to pace myself with all my socializing, Mercury retrograde in my 7th house, and pace myself with my communications. Can I listen as much as I want to be heard? Here is Mercury retrograde on the US July 4th chart. For those of you who are not familiar, I use the Gemini rising chart, which gives us the 9th house Pluto. And all through this summer, all through this Mercury retrograde, transiting South Node is on the US natal South Node. You can use the Sibley Sagittarius rising chart, and it still has the South Node, 6.5 degrees Aquarius, different house, but still has a nodal return going on. And here is the Sun conjunct the transiting North Node at Mercury retrograde. And what do we have going on all through this summer up until the midterm elections? Uranus in Taurus squaring the US natal nodes, shaking up everyone's sense of security if we don't have our head in the sand. And Uranus squaring the transiting nodes in the sky as well. So there's this back and forth energy between, well, as long as I feel safe and secure, I don't care about you. Consensus. Individuating states of consciousness going, oh, wait a minute. We appear to be secure, but as I watch all the wealth inequalities going on, are we really secure? What do we need to Uranus and Taurus change? Uranus is not going to make any active squares to Mercury during its retrograde. It already had that earlier, okay, just one waxing square, but it's still in the Mercury retrograde mix due to the nodes in Leo Aquarius. Then, of course, spirituating states of consciousness with this nodal axis return are just going, wait a minute. When will the masses wake up? When will they realize that it really is a global, what's the word? Oligarchy? When are we going to really, move towards what's fair and equal for all concerned? Stay tuned through this Mercury retrograde. We'll see what comes along and if it has a role in waking up the masses. Now, briefly, here's Donald Trump's chart. Mercury goes retrograde just before his Mars in the 12th house, just before the ascendant. And the nodes this summer are still within orb of playing on his Pluto. Mars went retrograde at 9 degrees Aquarius, just shy of that opposition. Sun's going to go over this Pluto. Leo Aquarius, me versus you, us versus them. Doesn't talk that way, does he? And here is, as Mercury goes retrograde, Venus squaring his nodes. Now, in someone who was expanding consciousness, this Venus signature would say, what is it I need to change about myself? How can I be as honest as possible? What we will see from his consciousness is a continuation of crying victim. Now, what gets interesting, I didn't put this chart in here. Stay tuned to our next week's podcast or go to our Mars retrograde in Aquarius webinar. There is a lunar eclipse on July 27th, and it is the Cero Series 129. And without going into details, those eclipses repeat themselves every 18, 19 years, I think it is. And Donald Trump was born under Cero Series 129. Just the fact that it is the same eclipse series, this lunar eclipse coming up here the end of July is going to be highly magnetized in his chart. And that Mercury retrograde there in his 12th house could bring up hidden or unconscious actions that he has taken and expose them to the light of day. It could also be working somewhat to almost destabilize him emotionally and mentally. I think it's just a ticking time bomb with all his shenanigans being exposed. And so Mercury retrograde, Mars retrograde, 3 eclipses in this North Node eclipse season, Cero Series 129. Stay tuned. Again, when will the masses wake up? As we said before, Mercury's going to be retrograde in fire signs 6.5 months. Mercury is in Leo, June 28th through September 5th. 2 full months of Mercury in one sign of the zodiac, when typically when it's moving, direct, full speed ahead, it will only spend 2 weeks. So 2 months versus 2 weeks. And in Leo, fixed fire. In Leo, it's all about me. It gets hard to see that larger picture for Mercury. And so one of the most basic things we'll be looking at with this Mercury retrograde is revisiting inner love versus outer love. So when we do not have a deep inner love, it can create insecurity. And when we're insecure, this Mercury retrograde could bring love triangles and the exposure of something like that. It could bring the drama kings and the drama queens, just, as Leroy said, sucking out all the oxygen in the room just to be noticed or to be the center of attention or to distract you from what they really want you to see. It can also bring about trauma with the Aquarius polarity. And what that has a tendency to do when we have those Leonian upsets in the world of love, the Aquarian polarity is to get us to be a little more objective about a situation. Oh, wait a minute. How can I expect anybody to love me if I don't love myself? And the more that I learn to love myself, the less attention I need, the less I expect it from another. The more I love myself, the more I change my internal magnetism, and I become an attracting magnet, drawing in a more evolved partner. So, this Mercury retrograde, how can you love yourself? Because, again, the more inwardly secure we become, the more we can recognize the outer world is only reflecting our inner world of self-love. And so if we don't deeply love ourselves and we have even a self-loathing, the world's going to loathe us back. This Mercury retrograde is an opportunity with that Aquarius polarity to objectify and heal any emotional arrested wounds. So any of the wounds we have experienced as a child can arrest our emotional maturation process. And therefore, we can revisit them when Mercury's retrograde in Leo. And the most common wounding we'll have as children is parents who could not acknowledge us as who we were, could not understand what was special and unique about us. Leroy, for those of you who don't know it, Consensus father, who, you know, berated him for wanting to go to college. You don't need that. Why don't you just stay home and get a job at a gas station and learn how to earn $1 and save $1? Couldn't understand the creativity within his own son, who went on to have a full ride 5-year scholarship to college. Baseball, by the way. And so we can have any type of that where parents, or even as we became young teenagers and the first person we fell in love with and they rejected us, and we could be carrying that rejection into all of our adult relationships and, you know, projecting onto them that they're rejecting us when they're not. So where's those type of inner wounded child memories and histories coming up for you? Can you Mercury, Polarity, Aquarius objectify it? Can you love yourself a little better? Love, love, love. Mercury retrograde in Leo is recognizing our natural role in the play of life versus our desire to want to direct the play or even play God. And anytime we think we're the big kahuna is going to give us either a psychic 2x4 or a physical 2x4, as we say up here in the northern plains. And a 2x4 is a piece of wood for construction, okay? And if you don't get it energetically, the universe can come and give it to you directly in a physical way, knock you off the top of the pyramid, off your high horse, and go, oops, excuse me, you're not the one in charge. I have a very good friend of mine who's a 5th house Pluto, and I, joke with her all the time. Sorry, sweetie pie, you don't get to play God this lifetime. And she throws that back in my face all the time. I know, Kim Marie, I know I'm not playing God. I don't get to play God. I just got to step back and let it all unfold and ask what my role is. Mercury's going to intensify all of that. Mars retrograde will intensify this. And the eclipses will intensify this. Even though it's Mercury retrograde, and that's always mental. Mercury left brain, communications, listening, speaking. Mercury retrograde during eclipses is going to make it all emotional. So don't forget to check in with your emotions. All right. So we will also review any creative self-actualization. That is our key word for Sun, Leo, 5th house in evolutionary astrology. How am I supposed to actualize myself through a sense of creativity? And with Mercury retrograde, it will show up, quote unquote, as the starving artist syndrome, or no one sees what I have to contribute. No one wants to buy what I've made. No one likes my creativity in XYZ way. And so the Leo mantra is I will, my will, divine will. Years ago, when I was, in my early days of studying evolutionary astrology, I created mantras for each of the 12 signs, and it includes the sign and the polarity sign. And so, Uranus and its rulership of Aquarius in the 11th house is sometimes known as the universal mind, the brain of God. Uranus literally rules the brain in health and wellness astrology. And its synapses and dendrites, and it co-rules the nervous system and the central nervous system specifically. So I will, my will, Leo, divine will, Aquarius. You can just say this mantra through Mercury retrograde to help you out. And with Mars retrograde, as we are, I will, my will, divine will. What would you have me do, Source? What would you have me do, Source? With Mars retrograde, there can be some need to find the courage to move forward and be a leader. There will be new leaders that will come forth during this Mercury-Mars retrograde. There will be leaders who fall off their pedestal during these Mercury and Mars retrogrades. But what we ultimately need to recognize is every single one of us is unique. And every single one of us is creative. And every single one of us has a social role to play in our world, however small or large our community circle is. And Mercury retrograde in Leo is redefining what that creativity is and what that social role is for you. Want to remind you, in natural law, nature is abundant. In other words, there is more than enough love to go around. And there is more than enough creativity to go around. Just look at it from the perspective of astrology and what the internet, technology, Aquarius has done in the world of astrologers. How much easier is it for you to study astrology due to the internet? Look at how many more people can learn astrology and go out there and be astrologers. Clients ask me, does my chart show I can be an astrologer? And I go, well, let me expose my prejudice first. I think everyone should study astrology. I think everyone could be an astrologer because it's the closest thing we have to an owner's manual. So there's more than enough creativity to go around in the world of astrology. So if you're feeling insecure because no one's loving you, or they're loving you the way you want them to, or you're feeling that no one's noticing this wonderful creative idea that you have, take some time to reflect through Mercury retrograde and Mars retrograde. It's just realigning to figure out how society needs your creativity, how to be of service with your creativity. And again, there's more than enough to go around. There's more than enough food on the planet. There's more than enough resources. There's more than enough money. It's just how are we going to go about more equitably sharing it? Let's see if Mercury and Mars retrograde can help us out in that. We can have reviews around children and parenting. Leo rules children in general. So Mercury retrograde in Leo can bring up karma around children. We already discussed our own wounding with our parents, but how many of you have children? How many of you have issues with your children coming up around Mercury retrograde in Leo? How many of you have issues around how you can be a better parent, Mercury retrograde in Leo? Can you get yourself out of the way and see your child for who they are? Can you objectify them? Can you objectify your own childhood history? Can you objectify your children's? Can you objectify your parents' childhood history and how they turned out the way they did? And of course, with this Pluto and Leo generation, we can see some, and not limited to them by any means, but we're finishing up a lot of the Pluto and Leo. We're starting to wind down the baby boomers coming into retirement age, and so they're living longer. Just medical technology is allowing everyone in industrialized worlds to live longer. So where are the role reversals going on? The parent becomes the child. The adult child has to step into the parenting roles. Some of us could see that going on. We also can address karma with children individually and collectively. We can look at the whole refugee and migration issues coming to the surface through Mercury retrograde in Leo. There will be something else we're going to find out that we didn't know about. While the transiting nodes are in Leo Aquarius, there will be more things in the news about children. Again, 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 again. And of course, when we take care of the least of us, we take care of all of us. And can remember we all have been children. How many times do you hear of somebody hurting somebody else and family members come out and say, well, they suffered with, mental issues their whole life. They were depressed as a child. They were bullied as a child. There can we arrest that type of cycle? Can we objectify it? Aquarius, can we create new social mechanisms that help all of us? Baby steps forward or cataclysmic steps forward? Stay tuned through Mercury retrograde in Leo. Now, with that Aquarius polarity, it really is about developing mental objectivity. Leo, me, me, me. Aquarius looks at the tribe, the community, the group. It looks at the largest social collective, all the way out to the global community. For me personally, I think it's just a joke that we are up in arms in the US over immigration when if you're of Northern European blood, you're the immigrant that created genocide on the original Americans. Can we objectify that? Can we step outside the immediacy of any situation we find ourselves in, see the larger picture, and what is our natural role in that larger picture? What we can find happening is because Mars retrograde in Aquarius, and again, Leo and Aquarius are fixed modality. Leo's fixed fire, Aquarius is fixed air. Fixed modality wants to persevere. It is the stubbornness. I've got to maintain. I've got to hold it together. Security, don't rock my boat. So resistance to change can actually be intensified through this Mercury and Mars retrograde cycles. The retrograde is trying to throw off the fixity, but if we're insecure, we will cling to it even more. So what do we have? Once again, we have one more lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse to bring things to a head, to bring the cataclysm if we're resisting change. So do your best to just, how can I step back? How can I detach? Can I ask questions? Can I seek to be understood? No, can I seek to understand more than I want to be understood? Can I seek to know more than I want to share my opinion? The polarity point in Aquarius also says, pay attention to any future-orientated messages that pop into your mind again and again and again and again. Not once or twice, but multiple times over this Mercury retrograde, the next, well, few weeks, even stretch it out with Mars retrograde, few months. If you keep getting these future-orientated messages popping up, this is where your own soul is intending to go. Can you embrace it? Can you find the courage, Leo? Can you understand the larger picture of why you need to operate in one direction if you keep getting that message again, even if it is not the way you are usually acting? Or you keep getting the message that I need to change this pattern of thought. I need to change this pattern of thought. So can you get the courage to, again, write out the affirmation, put it on a piece of paper, print it out, tape it on the bathroom mirror, whatever you've got to do to get the refrigerator, whatever you've got to do to change those thought patterns and change those actions. Use every tool at your disposal that you can come up with. And remember, with the Aquarius polarity, any shock or trauma is intended to expand one's perception of any situation. The tendency is to just get more and more frustrated. And with Mars retrograde, frustrated actions in the spur of the moment, rather than taking that deep breath and counting to 10 and actually trying to listen, to understand, to objectify. I'll give you a real sensitive example. I have a family member, young male, early 30s, married, 3 children, in the military, out on a family vacation with the in-laws. This is in Alaska. This happened last Thursday. They were driving home from a wonderful vacation, fishing, camping, and they were going down a road on a 2-lane highway up in Alaska with construction, and they met a big semi-rig hauling rock, and a rock the size of a volleyball bounced out of the truck, crashed through one of the windows of the vehicle, and my relative's youngest of 3 boys was instantly killed. The family is in complete and utter shock. And I had a conversation with my sister, and this little boy was 8 years old. And my sister has an 8-year-old, my little niece that you hear me talking about all the time, same age. And she called me just crying to tell me the news. It just cut her to the core because that's her only child. And, why would something like this happen? And, I just don't make sense of this. And so I was able to have a conversation about reincarnation with her. It says it's always hard to understand something from the immediacy of the trauma. But the point of trauma, if we can somehow, live through it, is to ponder that why and search, to ask the questions, to search for larger answers. And so I talked to her, and then I spent time, thinking about it, because this is the closest I've been to a child that I know, crossing over so unexpectedly. And poof, all of a sudden, his great grandmother, who is my aunt, and my other aunt. They lived together, and they ended up raising that father when he lost his mother early. All of a sudden, it was like, we're here. We showed up immediately. We're here teaching Noah that there is a family on this side just like the other side, and there's just as much love on this side, and blah, 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 blah. And I just had this downrush of thoughts and ideas and understandings of death being the door, not the wall. And so I'm hoping that I might have opportunity to speak. I know I will speak to my sister again and my mother again and talk to them about it and help expand their consciousness, Aquarius polarity, and understanding life and death. I don't know if I'll get a chance to speak to the young father, whom I just loosely call my nephew for simplicity's sake, but if I can, I will. So, pretty dramatic, Leo Aquarius, and we have a family funeral coming up here, but you get the point. This is Leo Aquarius, and when that fixed energy, we don't always understand in our left brain consciousness. And when Mercury's retrograde and points to that right brain, it points to asking why? Why God? Why Goddess? Why Source? What can I understand better? And this is what you want to ask for whatever's going on in your world with your immediate situations in your whatever goes on Mercury retrograde. The Aquarius polarity will also have us searching for like-minded individuals to create new friendships, friends leaving, friends coming. People who are true friends will move through us with any trauma. Looking for like-minded individuals to join new social groups and social causes. Social activism is very activated with the nodal axis in Leo Aquarius. And it's very activated in the United States with the transiting nodal axis, North Node Leo, South Node Aquarius, going over the US, North Node Leo, South Node Aquarius. Just because it doesn't make the news, don't think it isn't happening and being stirred up out there. And it is being stirred up both left and right, both inclusive and exclusive. It's my hope that the inclusive viewpoints maybe are a little more energized when we're doing that searching for like-minded individuals and trying to figure out our creative roles at this point in our space-time medium. There is the potential for new leadership roles to come out. Some of you listening to this call may find yourself being more active socially or politically than you have been in your past. And then finally, that Aquarius polarity, it's really intending for us to seek fairness and equality for all concerned, to really become more aware of this wealth inequality in such extremes that we have going on. 3 people in the United States have as much wealth as the bottom half. 8 individuals in the world have as much wealth as the bottom half of population in the world. It can't go on like that. And so Leo Aquarius rule inequality and elitism. Will Mercury, Mars, and the eclipses cause some upsets? Will it shake things up and redistribute? I don't know. Stay tuned. Energize it however you want to. I came across this little quote today. Everybody does better when everybody does better. You know, what is that? The rising tide lifts all boats. Everybody does better when everybody does better. Okay, moving along. Mercury retrograde moves so fast, it's always aspecting several planets during its retrograde. And here in evolutionary astrology, we look at the 360-degree cycle of phases and aspects to recognize how active Mercury really is. So here is the cycle of phases and aspects as a little reference sheet for you if you've never seen this before. This is coming from Dane Rudier's book, The Lunation Cycle, and it was fine-tuned by Jeffrey Green, and I fine-tuned it just a little bit more. By the way, whenever you have questions, you're welcome to just type into the Q&A board. Leroy's always there answering your questions as well as he can do it. And if you want to interrupt, ask a question direct, you can. Or if Leroy, if there's something I'm not covering, raise the issue up with Leroy and he'll speak up and mention it to me, and I would be happy to address it as best as I can. Mercury has 3 different aspects to Venus, and then it aspects Jupiter, Saturn, Chiron, Neptune, Pluto. Here again are those dates with the highlight of the Mercury retrograde cycle, August 8th, retrograde July 25th to August 19th. And so here's Mercury retrograde's interior conjunction to the Sun, which is going to come along again here, 16.5 degrees Leo. Generic chart for you. There will be squares to Jupiter going on. Moon in Cancer will oppose Pluto in Capricorn that day. And Venus is in an opposition to Chiron retrograde with Uranus in a T-square retrograde. So again, some of these planets are making aspects to Mercury. We'll go over them, but this is the activity of the Mercury interior conjunction. And what's feisty as well about this interior conjunction is the day before Uranus goes retrograde for the first time in Taurus. Theoretically, we will have 7 Uranus retrogrades in Taurus, 8 if you talk how it dips into the sign before and the sign after. And so it's quite possible at this interior conjunction, there could be some upsets and surprises, some drama that could go on. We could also, because remember, the interior conjunction, the highlight of the retrograde cycle, the left brain, we could just have Uranus, the individuated unconsciousness. Mercury, individuated consciousness. Uranus going retrograde. All the unconscious stuff could pop up to the surface into her conscious mind. So we can have ahas and oh my gosh going on all over the place. And then a couple of days later, August 11th, we're going to have the second solar eclipse of this North Node eclipse season as well. So we're going to have a little time period there between August 7th and 11th that gets pretty active. So remember this date, August 7th, 11th, and pay attention to what you recognize with whatever's frustrating you, with whatever's bothering you, with whatever makes you feel insecure, with whatever ways you are feeling unloved or perhaps, frustrated in a relationship if you are in one. Uranus turning stationary retrograde at this interior conjunction, there could be all kinds of truths exposed. We could have something happen that makes all of us feel more insecure because Uranus in Taurus is going to be exposing Taurian insecurities, helping us to go inward and create deeper inner security. It'll happen in all kinds of different ways for each of us. Mars is still going to be conjunct that south node just before it dips back into Capricorn. Let's look at this interior conjunction with the U.S. chart. Will our public opinions remain polarized, or can there be some upsets or news that cause shifts in understanding? This Mercury interior conjunction with the Gemini rising chart will be directly opposing the moon in Aquarius, which in mundane charts is the public opinion right here. So here's this opposition. Will we continue to be polarized, or will we wake up and make shifts? The nodal axis are still going to be within their orbs. And the interior conjunction, this moon in Cancer opposing Pluto in the sky is going to be fairly close to the US. Jupiter, Sun in Cancer. You can even pull in Mercury in Cancer. And of course, Jupiter's over here direct in Scorpio, making a T-square to the interior conjunction and the US moon. As I look at these charts, and again, these aspects will be active as well, except for the moon in the Sibley Sag rising chart for July 4th. As I look at this nodal axis transit and the Mercury and Mars retrogrades, I just go, if we don't have a change in public opinions, wow, how much further will we sink? And Leroy goes, Kim Marie, you have to remember the consensus world is only looking forward to their vacation in the summer. They're not paying any attention. And then and as he said that, I went, oh, so then we really do get a cataclysmic upset to make them pay attention, huh? Yeah, stay tuned. Hope not. If I could, predict, I'd tell you all what was going to come. But as you know, prediction's not a healthy word in astrology. I prefer forecasting. Here it is in Donald Trump chart. Those nodes are still close to his natal Pluto. That Mercury interior conjunction to the Sun, kind of close to his Mars, kind of sandwiched right in between them into the Mars, into his natal Pluto-Mars midpoint to some degree. What secrets can be exposed here? The Venus T-square with Saturn and Chiron are hitting Donald Trump's Neptune and Mercury. And as I've said before, with this Mercury-Neptune, we have a tendency again to look at the Gemini Sag of Trump's chart and the truth versus lies and the lies and the lies. But this Mercury in Cancer square Neptune, this is sporadic thinking, and this is confused thinking. And this is someone who gets emotionally attached to his own opinions and then starts to believe that if he utters the words, it's gospel. So will the Mercury retrograde interior conjunction shake a few things up? Stay tuned. Are we numb yet? Whoops, excuse me, went too fast there. There. Mercury always makes several aspects with Venus when it's retrograde. And so here we're looking at the conscious mind and its values. And right now, Venus is ahead of Mercury. Venus is higher in the evening skies from Mercury. If you're out there looking at the evening skies, which I would encourage all of you to do if you can go out there and look at Mercury, Venus, Mars. No, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, in that order from the evening sky going up. When Mercury is ahead of Venus, it's kind of like forcing the mind to support what Venus wants. And yet, it's also a time period, Mercury retrograde, to slow down and take time and discuss what's important. What are our values and priorities? And Mercury retrograde in Leo doesn't want to take anyone else into consideration. Listen, here's my values. Here's what's important to me. You're willing to go along with it so that I feel good, right? And everybody else is going, I think the same way. So where are we going to objectify or compromise, or are we going to get into an argument about it? Mercury will make a conjunction with Venus October 15th during Venus's retrograde cycle. And here's something else to know looking ahead. Mercury's going to go retrograde the same day, November 16th, that Venus turns direct. So between now and mid-October, when they have their conjunction, Mercury has an opportunity to help clarify some of those deepest values in relationships. Leo, square Scorpio, and then support Venus during its retrograde. So Mercury can be getting glimpses right now of what we're going to be working on in our relationships when Venus is retrograde in Scorpio Libra in October, November. And I didn't put a slide out for that, but hold on, I can give you the dates. Venus goes retrograde October 5th, 11 Scorpio, and again it goes direct November 16th at 25 Libra. Now, some of the distortions that can happen between Mercury Venus then, of course, is that selfishness, and my needs are more important than yours. And when that happens, it's going to turn into power struggles during that Venus retrograde in Scorpio. So, Mercury retrograde in Leo, how well can you be compromising? Because this Venus retrograde cycle is going to adjust any love issues that Mercury didn't address. And what's Mercury retrograde in Leo? Reaching for inner love. And the more self-love we have, the more Taurian, Scorpio polarity, self-reliant we will be, the more we can address whatever those power struggles or intimacy issues are with Venus retrograde in Scorpio Libra. So this Mercury retrograde cycle can again be exposing relationship issues through Mars retrograde and then through the Venus retrograde coming up. So take some time out for conversations. Listen to someone else, objectify it, speak up if you need to, and repeat it. Listen, objectify, speak up if you need to, and remember with the Mars retrograde, it is a foundation of a friendship, Aquarius, that helps us solve intimate issues. On the zodiacal wheel, Leo is lovers and Aquarius is friends. And in natural law, friends become lovers, and when lovers have learned their lessons, they go back to being friends. We don't have a tendency to do that. See if you can be working towards that if you have any intimacy issues going on for you through Mars, Mercury, and Venus retrogrades this summer and fall. Mercury's going to make 3 last quarter squares to Jupiter, Leo, Scorpio. And remember, just Mercury alone, retrograde, is left brain to right brain. Here's the aspects. Last quarter square, crises in consciousness. Left brain surrendering to right brain and considering the larger picture. And what will happen is Mercury retrograde in Leo will resist. There can, again, intensify the upsets, the traumas, the power struggles. And it really behooves Mercury to listen to whatever intuitive hits Jupiter and Scorpio gets. You know, Scorpio is a BS meter. Scorpio is the psychological detective of the zodiac. I sense a lie. Oh, I'm not lying, says Leo. I know what I'm talking about. So, can you again stop defending and just listen? Can you change? Can you evolve? Can you grow? Can you trust your intuition? Can you listen to your gut regardless of the words that somebody else is saying? These aspects, because the Venus retrograde is going to be in Scorpio, these aspects will also set the stage for the Venus retrograde cycle. And I say time and time again, if you're as honest as you can be, honesty comes back to you via the law of attraction. If you're honest, someone else's lies are going to be exposed. And that will work individually and collectively. It just might take a little longer on the collective cycle because consensus consciousness tends to lag behind time-wise in making changes. Big aspect in the sky, and we're going, well, why didn't anything happen? Again, consensus consciousness, approximately 7 out of 10 people anywhere on planet Earth, any race, any country, approximately 7 out of 10 souls can't think beyond the space-time they were born into. They can't look at the bigger picture. They can't objectify it beyond how it personally affects them. And consensus consciousness is so caught up in security that they resist change. And that's why we have uniform, slow evolution and cataclysmic evolution. And sometimes those cataclysmic evolutions happen after the fact. Mercury's a trigger. Mercury can bring some of those cataclysmic events in order to catch up. And with Mars retrograde as well as Mercury, perhaps some of that will happen. However, if it doesn't seem to happen on timing with the planets, do not think it's not going to happen. I just did a double negative for those of you who pay attention to the media. So, patience. Sometimes there's a catch-up. And again, not just consensus consciousness, but sometimes also with the fixed modalities. So, will there be more traumatic upsets? Stay tuned. Who knows? Pray for peace. Mercury makes waning sesquisquadrates to Saturn. So waning square and a half, going from full phase oppositions to disseminating phase, which is society, which is mass collective consciousness. And so these Mercury-Saturn aspects, they're not showing up in your astrology calendars, yet they're still active. And this is full phase to disseminating phase is going from yang energy moving outward to yin energy moving inward. And basically what this is saying with Mercury-Saturn is we have to learn to accept responsibility for anything and everything in our life. Saturn's in its own sign, Capricorn. There's a maturation process that we all are going to be undergoing with this Mercury retrograde, whether we can recognize it or not, and society will force it upon us. And by society, that can be our family forcing it upon us, that can be friends, that can be a group we're involved with, it can be boss, it is it's people outside of ourselves. Second half of the circle, waning sesquisquadrates, people outside of ourselves that can be forcing us to have some type of maturation, to be growing up, to be getting off our pyramid and thinking that the whole universe revolves around us. And so, collectively, these Mercury-Saturn aspects can signify societal struggles to understand evolving securities. So here again, back to me versus you, us versus them. Oh my gosh, I can't share with you because then I won't be safe. I can't let you come to my country because then I won't have a job. Blah, blah. And so Saturn moving through its own sign of Capricorn for 3 years, 18, 19, 20, is going to break down structures to create new ones. Saturn's initiating a brand new 28, 29-year cycle of maturing. just generically in the sky. And so this Mercury retrograde can have us feel somewhat as, oh, wait a minute, I thought I fit in here. I thought I was secure in my job. Maybe I'm not. It also, even though you wouldn't necessarily see this unless you really get into the cycle of aspects and phases, as you move into disseminating phase between any two planets, this is an opportunity for leadership. However, it can also bring leadership upsets, falls from grace, conflicts. And so show me the truth, show me the truth. I want to see everything from my perspective, Leo. Retrograde, I've got to see the larger perspective, Aquarius. And then I'll know my role in society and how I fit in. Mercury's waxing sesquisquadrates to Chiron. That's a waxing square and a half. That's going from first quarters phase to gibbous phase, and it's still yang to yin energy. Here it's a double fire sign, though. And Chiron's just fresh in a new 8-year cycle in Aries. So here we are searching for new ways to self-heal. And can we listen? Can we be open to taking in new information? And if we can do that, then can we turn that Leo creativity into trying out new healing modalities? Or maybe we can find the creativity to be the healer. The waxing sesquisquadrate is asking us to learn how to lead with humility versus selfish outbursts. And for some of us, it will create the collective energy to stand up to selfishness. Of course, there is also the potential in which we refuse to remain a victim. Chiron, our woundedness. Chiron in Aries, here's the spiritual warrior. Let's do something about healing ourselves. Mercury retrograde in Leo, can we ponder what that would be? So it's quite possible that these waxing sesquisquadrates, which are also not in your astrology calendars, can be some catalyst for collective activism, initiating change. You know, in the broadest levels, Chiron and Aries can be initiating change for healing the planet, climate change. We'll see. Stay tuned in regards to that. By the way, I'll just say, I think Leroy mentioned it, 30% off forecasting webinars. And we just did a long series of Chiron and Aries. Again, like he said, definitely get archetypes and cycles. We also did Uranus and Taurus. Get the archetypes and cycles, then you can get all 12 houses or just your specific house of where it can be happening for you. And Chiron just went retrograde in Aries. Uranus is going to go retrograde in Taurus August 7th. Mercury makes waxing in conjuncts to Neptune, 150-degree aspect in the gibbous phase. This can be bravado, covering up self-doubt through selfish extremes. If Mercury in Leo is insecure, what does it do? It tries to get bigger, bolder, louder, notice me. And I'm just going to cover everything up because the waxing in conjunct is self-improvement. It is those humiliations that turn us inward to say, oh, wait a minute, I'm not the center of the universe. And so if we are trying to be bigger, bolder, louder, I'm the smartest, I'm the fastest, I'm the strongest, I'm the richest, I'm the biggest, I'm the most important, this aspect can bring along some different types of upsets, downfalls, humiliations. What the aspect is intending is to have us slow down and inwardly listen to universal source, Neptune, and learn the next step of how we can deeply love ourselves. And if we do that, that will lead Leo to inspired creative actions and leadership. So on those dates, and as you can see, the retrograde one is very close to the interior conjunction. The last one is the Mars turning stationary direct. What is the next step in my self-improvement, Source? What is the next step in my self-improvement? Mercury also makes waning inconjuncts to Pluto, Leo to Capricorn. This is the 210-degree aspect on the 360 wheel. These are outer adjustments. The inner conjunction turns us in upon ourselves, making inner adjustments. The outer inconjunct has us making adjustments out in the world, with people, with relationships. And so Mercury to Pluto, it's recognizing that there is always another source of power in the universe greater than ourself. No matter how powerful you think you are, there is another source of power greater than you, all the way up to the ultimate source of power. So I don't think inconjuncts are in the astrological calendars either, in your general ones. So these aspects to Neptune and Pluto, I don't think they're in the calendars either. So you might want to print these slides out. Pay attention here. You know, these are going to be the power struggles. Outer inconjunct, waning inconjunct. And a lot of it's going to be come down to inclusive versus exclusive principles. And inclusive or matriarchal principles, what some in EA will call natural law, is about giving, sharing, and including. Remember, nature is abundant. Have you ever planted a garden and went, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with all this zucchini? Oh my gosh, where'd all these weeds come from? The exclusive principles or patriarchal principles are basically taking, hoarding, and excluding. And from the last 8,000 years, we've had these patriarchal distortions to the point that it is literally, you know, affecting our well-being all over the planet on Earth with climate change. So we can't keep going the way we're going. What's going to create the pendulum swings? A couple of big events or big, slow changes in consciousness. Mercury Pluto could be part of that. But there can be these personal and collective upsets around control. And what we want to be reaching for is self-empowerment. Self-love, Mercury retrograde in Leo. Self-empowering. We can't control the outer world. We can't control how long we're here on planet Earth. All we can do is make sure that we are doing the best we can do while we're here. All right. Here's Mercury stationary direct, August 18th, 19th. Mercury at 11.5 degrees Leo. The node still hanging out right at about 6 degrees Leo. I didn't, you know, point out very many specific aspects to this, although we do have a grand trine in Earth that will come along in a few days with Mercury direct. Earth events, I don't know. You know, maybe, you know, good news in being able to take care of security for ourselves. But again, as Mercury turns stationary direct in Leo, how are you empowering and loving yourself? And Mercury conjunct the North Node is egoically moving forward. And the North Node of the Moon, ruled by the Moon, means emotionally moving forward. And of course, a week later, Mars turning stationary direct. How mature are you? How self-responsible are you? And if we're not working to self-love or be self-responsible or, be clear in our actions, Mercury direct can bring more drama, trauma, upsets just as easily as Mercury retrograde. U.S. Gemini rising chart, nodes on the nodes all the way through Mercury retrograde. And what happens as Mercury goes stationary direct? Mars is backed up pretty darn close to Pluto. Mars is, what degree does Mars go stationary direct? Hold on just a second here. I got little pieces of paper. Thank you for allowing me to look this up. Mars goes direct 28.5 degrees Capricorn. So it'll back up one more degree and be, within 1 degree of the natal U.S. Pluto. I think Mercury direct and Mars direct, the latter parts of August, if we haven't seen some things move forward yet, we'll just poof, really start to shake things up, activate things even more. Pick your favorite issue, in any way collectively, and how is it going to start moving forward. But this nodal axis, and again, the U.S. has a nodal axis return every 18.5 years, just like we do. This one seems to be pretty potent because it's coming with eclipses. Just because you have a nodal axis return doesn't mean eclipses are happening at the same time. This one has been having eclipses happen last year, this year. So it makes it a little more potent to bring things to a head collectively and help us shift and move things forward. I also think it's more potent because transiting Pluto is balsamic, this U.S. Pluto, and just getting closer year by year, year by year. Now, with Donald Trump, when Mercury goes stationary direct, it's right on his natal Pluto. Sun is right on his Mars. Will there be hidden stuff coming out? On the ultimate level, it's about a soul wake-up call. Mercury, making things conscious for the soul, Pluto, and helping create different actions. Well, I'm not looking for any come to Jesus moment with Donald Trump. It's going to be more exposure and humiliation whenever and however that comes. And if you want to look forward, just because we've looked at his chart, Pluto by transit, will make oppositions to his natal Saturn in 2020 and oppositions to Venus in 2021. Won't that be interesting if somehow he squeaks through this presidency, and I don't necessarily see that happening yet. If he is running for office in 2020, re-election, he's going to be running with transiting Pluto opposing natal Saturn. Whew, stay tuned for that. He's going to have it whether he's in office or not. Pluto is a great equalizer. And Pluto opposing his Saturn, once in a lifetime aspect, that could be a tendency to show him who's really in charge. Mercury retrograde in Leo. Where do I need to love myself better? How do I honor another as I honor myself? How do I express universal creativity through me? Where do I need to be more objective in life? How can I support fairness and equality for all? What is my next leadership role? All right, everyone. That's all my information for this Mercury retrograde cycle. Comments, questions? Our next Pay It Forward webinar will be November 12th when Mercury goes retrograde from Sag to Scorpio. Here's the next 2 retrogrades going into early 2019. Here are future public webinars here at EAN. October 1st, we'll do Venus retrograde in Scorpio Libra. Once a year, when Jupiter changes signs, we do a two-part webinar cycle. Part 1 is archetypes, and part 2 is through the 12 houses. And again, here's the next Mercury retrograde webinar that I just mentioned. Stay tuned. We can have more educational webinars through the winter. I too am in the midst of summer, so I haven't thought much about my fall winter schedule yet for public webinars, but I always try to get the forecasting ones outlined for you. Here are the Mercury retrograde aspects that I've mentioned on all of those slides for you in chronological order. So if you'd like to be able to follow all of these aspects, you'll have them on your PowerPoint slides that you can print out and follow, and even mark on your calendars if you want to. All right, I rattled it off and didn't do too bad. Okay. Comments, questions, anything that I didn't mention? If you're not aware of this, I'm pretty much a philosophical, psychological astrologer, and I really look at those themes rather than sometimes bullet pointing events.
I would just remind everybody to be looking for the recording to come out tomorrow evening. It'll be in a follow-up email from the webinar service, so be looking for that in your inbox. I'll have the link to the PDF included in that email, as well as just the video recording of tonight's webinar will be attached there as well. You can also pick it up on our Evolutionary Astronet YouTube channel. I'll post it there, as well as on our free forecasting podcast page, Star Lady Soul Reader Network. So if you can't find it, that's going to be its own Mercury retrograde issue. So we'll post it in 3 or 4 different places.
Thank you, Leroy. Comments, questions?
Nope, just a lot of comments coming through the board, just thanking you for the homework and the research, Kim Marie. So appreciate all of that. It takes a lot of effort to produce one of these webinars on a daily basis. So I'm glad we don't do them daily, but it does take a whole day to get it done, at least.
Phew, you put me into trauma just saying that, Leroy.
Right. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you, and just breathe deep, pace yourself, and love yourself through this Mercury Mars retrograde, and pray for peace, fairness, and equality for everyone on planet Earth. Thank you for listening.
Aho.